Toronto's police chief says his people have found no evidence yet that the man who killed 2 people Sunday was part of the ISIS terror group. That said, ISIS says Faisal Hussein was one of its soldiers, responding to calls to target citizens of the U.S.-led coalition against it. Hussein was killed by police. His family is saying he suffered from lifelong mental health problems. A suicide bomber on a motorcycle rammed into people waiting outside a busy polling station on Election Day in Pakistan. At least 31 people were killed there. Pakistanis are voting following a campaign featuring deadly violence and allegations of widespread manipulation. The American pastor accused of espionage and terrorism in Turkey has been released from jail, but he's not going home, and the international tensions over his case are far from over. Religion correspondent Lauren Green reports tonight from the State Department, where diplomats are focusing on religious liberty and persecution this week.
This morning, Pastor Andrew Brunson, who was in prison in Turkey for nearly 2 years, has been let out of jail at Bucha. He's still under house arrest, so our work is not done.
A step in the right direction, but not far enough, say U.S. officials. Over on Capitol Hill, Senator Tom Tillis, who met with Brunson last week, sees today's developments also as a good first step, but is keeping up the pressure to bring Brunson home.
When I met with him in prison several months ago, he was definitely, he had lost 50 pounds, and he is very much under a lot of stress, but I think that he's dealing, coping with very, very difficult circumstances.
Brunson, a 50-year-old evangelical pastor from North Carolina who's lived in Turkey for more than 2 decades, was arrested in the fall of 2016 and charged with espionage and conspiracy to overthrow the Turkish government. Brunson's arrest has caused tension between the United States and Turkey. After his 3rd court appearance last week and remanded back to prison, President Trump tweeted, "A total disgrace that Turkey will not release respected U.S. pastor Andrew Brunson from prison. He has done nothing wrong and his family needs him." Brunson's transfer to house arrest came midway through the first ever ministerial to advance religious freedom at the U.S. State Department, a gathering of 80 senior officials from around the globe. Yesterday, Brunson's daughter appealed to the delegates on her father's behalf.
I'm still waiting to wear the wedding dress that I got 2 years ago. I'm still waiting for my dad to walk me down the aisle, and I'm still waiting for that father-daughter dance.
Now, Brunson's move to a less restrictive place has relieved some of the tension between the U.S. and Turkey. But lawmakers say only Brunson's full release would begin to restore the relationship between the two nations. Brett.
Lauren Green, live at the State Department. Lauren, thank you. When we come back, the deal maker in chief delivers. We'll talk about it with the panel, the trade agreement with the European Union, and all the news of the day.
This was a very big day for free and fair trade. We agreed today, first of all, to work together towards 0 tariffs. The European Union is going to start almost immediately to buy a lot of soybeans.
I had the intention to make a deal today, and we made a deal today. We have identified a number of areas on which to work together. Work towards 0 tariffs on industrial goods.
Well, the president, with a surprise announcement in the Rose Garden with the EU, trying to get to 0 tariffs, but they have struck a deal, and that could change some dynamics, at least. You heard the Secretary of Commerce earlier on the show. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times. Amy Walter, national editor for the Cook Political Report. And Tom Rogan, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Amy, clearly this White House is feeling and hearing from Republican lawmakers and farmers in the Midwest. This seems like at least one check on the board to kind of move or relief.
I thought that was a really good piece that you played about one of the farmers saying, I don't know if this is going to come in time. I don't know what I'm supposed to be planting. I don't know if this is an election ploy. What are we supposed to do? And so it's pretty clear that the White House getting that message, both in the package that they announced the other day, the $12 billion sort of bailout for these farmers, and then an agreement to make an agreement about something in the EU, and the president, of course, hyping the word soybeans a lot. When we first heard about the EU, what most people were waiting to hear about were auto tariffs. Instead, we heard a lot about soybeans, which suggests that the real focus is on the Farm Belt much more than on the EU.
Charlie.
Or the Rust Belt.
I thought it was interesting when you asked Wilbur Ross about China operating on a different calendar, and I mean, that's to put it lightly. They operate on a far different calendar. They look at things in terms of tens and even 100 years out, whereas the United States, the politicians really haven't been doing that at all. And I think that Donald Trump, ran his campaign very much with very much a big picture thing, talking about free trade, talking about the problems with free trade, something that both parties had sort of ignored. Both parties embraced the idea that, oh no, free trade is great for everybody. Well, it's not great for everybody. And I think that the fact that Donald Trump was able to get some concessions out of the EU today, or at least an admission that there are some disparities there that can be fixed, that's a real win for him.
Talking to the secretary, saying that they're trying to get to zero, and he mentioned this at the G7. It was kind of blown over by everything else he said at the G7. But your thoughts on this today?
Yeah, I mean, it was really striking, isn't it, that the secretary says, Brett, actually it goes further. It goes to that President Trump's aspiration here is to be the most free trade president you could have with the EU. But I think the reason you could see that being potential is that unlike, for example, China, whereas the wage cost calculation that takes away American jobs, the president would say. With the EU, it is high-value jobs, high-cost jobs, so there isn't that prospective loss. And at the same time, in terms of the various industries, whereas the flow from both sides of the Atlantic, there is the idea there that you could have an alignment. And so I also think China will be very concerned with this kind of rhetoric coming from the two today, because what China really does not want to have is an alignment between the European Union and the United States, with them both then going to Beijing and saying, hey, stop taking our IP.
Meanwhile, Great Britain is on its way out of the EU, or at least planning to, and they may be holding the bag. All right, up on Capitol Hill, Secretary Pompeo in some heated exchanges with senators about that Helsinki summit.
The president was very clear with Vladimir Putin about U.S. positions. They're the U.S. positions that are the Trump administration's positions, and he spoke about them very firmly and clearly when he met with Vladimir Putin.
And he told you that?
Senator, I'm telling you what he had a conversation with Vladimir Putin about, and I'm telling you what U.S. policy is today. I understand, Senator, I understand the game that you're playing.
No, Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, I don't appreciate you characterizing my questions. My questions is to get to the truth.
So one half of the questions went like that up in that hearing.
Didn't. What a surprise. That's so unlike any of these hearings. Yeah, in Washington. I mean, I think it goes really to the heart of the challenge. I don't know whose challenge it is for the administration and also for Senator Menendez there, but that there are positions and policies that the administration has taken on Russia that are pretty hard. And pretty hard line and aggressive. And then there's the president's words. And which one are you supposed to be focusing on? The president is the spokesperson for the United States of America. What he says has incredible influence. Policy matters too, but when you sort of boil it down, if the president's words aren't matching up with the policy, then where does that leave? It is his policy, right? It is, absolutely. It's the Trump administration policy with the president. Very different.
Today, before this hearing, Secretary Pompeo saying that the U.S. is not recognizing Crimea as a Russia territory. Remember, this is different than the Obama administration, which said we're not going to stand for this, and suddenly they had a different time zone and new passports.
Yeah, and Amy's exactly right. It is a sort of words versus actions thing, and the actions are, as is often the case with Donald Trump. Sometimes he says things that kind of different people take different ways, but the actions are, I think, the important thing here. But it was fun fireworks watching Pompeo spar with Menendez and others. But at the end of the day, of course, the president of the United States can meet with foreign leaders privately, and of course, he is allowed to have a Secretary of State with whom he has conversations that are kept protected.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Bolton saying it's not going to. Putin is not coming to Washington until the witch hunt is over. That was his specific words. But until the Mueller probe is finished.
Yeah, look, I think there is a concern, or congressional Republicans did not want that summit to happen just before the midterms. But I think also there is this broader understanding in the White House, at least with the advisors to the president, that if you can nail down some of the tangibles in terms of Syria going forwards to test the Russians out before the summit, that is a better way to go. I did think it was interesting on the Hill today, as much as we talk about the president's rhetoric as a problem on Russia, Secretary Pompeo at one point saying he was being challenged by Democrats on what the Russian Defense Defense Ministry is saying about the leader of Special or Central Command. And he said, you know, why are you trusting what the Russians are saying? So, you know, he was playing their own game at them, and they didn't quite know what to do with that. So it's interesting, this wordplay.
All right, lightning round Wednesday here. Michael Cohen tapes President Trump, tip of the iceberg, or multi-day story?
I don't know that we can get any more out of that tape. The question is, how many more tapes are there? There's supposedly a dozen tapes. We don't know if the president's on any of those. And who's leaking them, and how many more? Is this the most salacious, or are there more to come?
Giuliani claims he's not, but we'll see.
It's been a year and a half since Donald Trump sent that tweet that blew the world up about how Trump Tower was tapped. We knew that DOJ had tapped at least somebody in there, and little did we know. So it was his private lawyer was doing it too. And I think the question is, was Cohen? Did he make that recording in good faith, or was it? Was he trying? One thing I can assure you, I don't think CNN is doing much to preserve the evidence.
There you go. When we come back, a big surprise for a military family.